Good morning, everyone. Today we are back for our second to last day of Summer of the Secret Squadron. I'm getting excited to find out how this turns out. Today we're starting with chapter 28. Of course, we had some unfinished business. The officers wanted to know what in the world we were doing on the lander's roof after midnight. While the fire department secured the sign back to the wall, we told them the whole story. Guess we could arrest you for breaking and entering, the first officer said, but you didn't really enter anything. We breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, there's the destruction of property, the officer said, but then again, it wasn't exactly destroyed. Again, we exhaled. Well, there is actually the theft of property, the first officer added, but is it stealing if the property never really belonged to Old Man Landers? Just as I thought, we were going to get off scot-free. Mrs. Jackson pulled up in her SUV along with our dads. What in the world are you doing? My dad was first to speak. How did you find out? I was somewhat shocked to see them. I heard it on the scanner, boys, Mrs. Jackson confessed. I was afraid you might be hurt. I knew your parents would need to know. Boys, what were you thinking? Mr. Johnson asked. I knew you wanted to get on that roof, but I never really thought you'd go to this length to do it. Exactly what length did you go to? Dad asked. We recounted the details, going light on Logan's fall through the roof and Sumner getting stuck in the exhaust vent, but there was no getting around the sign part. We told it like it was, and the police were there to make sure we told it right. Both Dads and Mrs. Jackson walked around to the side of the building to examine the zip line strung between the two roofs. Are you insane? Is all Dad could say. I thought I was raising two reasonable, sensible boys, but now I see that you both are completely out of your minds, Mr. Johnson concluded. Our dads walked back over to the police. Are these kids in any real trouble? Dad asked. Well, we can't seem to find anything to book them on, so I guess they're free to go, the officer said with a grin. Thanks so much, Brad, Mr. Johnson said, calling the officer by name. Sounds like you saved my son's life. Yes, thank you so much, officers, Dad said. I wasn't sure if Mom was going to kiss me or kill me. She said she wanted to do both. In the end, she kissed me, but only after a lengthy lecture. Dad said we would talk about it in the morning and sent me to bed. Before hitting the sheets, I sat down on my window seat and peered out the window. I could see Sumner and Logan moving around in their room, and then suddenly they came to the window as if they knew I would be there. Their faces were dark, but it didn't really matter. I knew they must have had the same knowing smile on their face that was on mine. A smile that said we just experienced something we would remember the rest of our lives. No matter what else happened, no matter who else came into our lives or left, we would always be a part of each other because of this night, of this week. It was an amazing moment. Finally, we gave each other a wave and I climbed into bed. I didn't want to let that moment end, but fatigue won out and I drifted off to sleep with a smile on my face. Chapter 29. Morning, once again, came late as Mom let me sleep in. When I finally came downstairs, Mom had thought of a few more things she somehow forgot to say the night before. But it was short, and afterwards she gave me another kiss on the cheek. As soon as you get done with breakfast, your dad wants to see you at the store. My mind jumped from one theory to another about what punishment I might receive. After fretting about it over my bowl of Cheerios, I decided I was ready to face the music. Dad was talking with Mr. Parks when I arrived. Sounds like you had some exciting night, Mr. Parks laughed as he walked away, leaving Dad and me to ourselves. Dad led us into his office. Sit down, Dad said. I sat down. For a long time he didn't speak. I had never been in this much trouble. Well, Benjamin, to be honest, I'm at a loss for words. Last night I was ready to skin your hide or at least ground you for the rest of the summer. But this morning I realized that I was at least partly to blame for this whole thing. I knew you boys wanted to get up on that roof, and I even looked for a way myself, but it didn't enter my mind that you would pull a stunt like this. You know, I've talked to you from time to time about taking risk, and how it's good to take some risks, but I do believe I've shared with you a few rules to consider before doing anything crazy. It should be well thought out, I recited from memory. 2, worth the risk. 3, not life-threatening, I answered, guilty. Aha! I knew there were 3, Dad said sarcastically. But it seems you totally disregarded reasons 1 and 3, especially 3. What do you have to say for yourself? I guess we did. That's it? That's all you have to say? I'm sorry, Dad. We kept telling ourselves that it was no different than zipping down from the treehouse, and we did rig up a safety strap. We just didn't think about how to get down. Again, there was an uncomfortable length of silence before Dad spoke again. Benjamin, I have one more thing to say to you. I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm going to. All the while I was ready to skin your hide, I couldn't help but also feel, well, proud of you. What you did was crazy, but it was also very brave. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I wouldn't want you to try something like this again, but I am proud of you. I couldn't believe my ears. It sounded like I might not be receiving any punishment. I waited to make sure. How much do you think all that stuff you found is worth if you sold everything? Dad seemed to be changing the subject. I don't know, maybe a couple $1,000, I guessed. I hope more. I'd say that's a good low estimate. It could certainly be worth quite a bit, maybe 5,000 or 6,000. Really think so? Now, I said maybe, but you do realize that you have something that's actually worth a lot more than all of those things that you found. What do you mean? I mean your friendship with Summer and Logan. That's something more valuable than anything you might find under a railroad bridge or inside a cave. Figured that out last night, I confided. Last night I didn't fall asleep thinking about the stuff we found. All I could think about was my friends. Have you seen them today? No, not yet. I'm sure they're as ready to see you as you are them. So why don't you get on out of here? That's it? I said surprisingly. That's it, Dad smiled. Thanks, Dad. I gave him a big hug. I left the office, free as a bird. I couldn't believe I had not been issued any punishment at all. As I stepped out the back door and hopped on my bike, I couldn't help but race all the way back home. I had come down to the store heavy as a rock, and I was riding back up the hill, light as a feather. That's the end of chapter 29. Chapter 30. I dropped my bike in the yard and ran over to Sumner and Logan's. I could hardly wait for Mrs. Johnson to let me in the door. She pointed up to the ceiling, and I raced upstairs. I felt like we hadn't seen each other in days. Benjamin! They both yelled when I came into their room. We came together and made a ring of high fives. You did it, I said. Can you believe it? I still can't believe last night was real, Sumner said. Here's proof that it was. Logan pointed to a stack of nickels on the desk. Well, was there anything else in the bag? I asked hopefully. There were 57 nickels, a ring, and a medal, Sumner said, moving over to his desk. I walked over to examine the loot. The ring was unlike the other 2 we had found. It was big and brassy, with a large red, obviously plastic stone. The medal was a very dull brass cross, hanging on a bar by 2 small chains that said, Secret Squadron First Class Medal of Excellence. These are pretty cool, I said, holding up the ring and the cross. Is it everything you hoped for, Logan? It may not be gold or diamonds, but Dad says the nickels may be worth quite a bit of money, maybe as much as $5,000, Logan said. Really? $5,000? I was still a little astounded at hearing the number. Or a few hundred, Sumner said. It all depends on what year they were minted and how well they clean up. Dad said he would help us look on the internet tonight. Amazingly, Logan and Sumner had not received any punishment either. We concluded that our dads had gotten together on this. Mrs. Johnson said if it had been left up to the moms, we would be washing windows and mowing lawns for everyone in the neighborhood for the rest of our lives. We were glad our dads made the call on this one. We decided to gather all of the things we had found and get them ready for the photo shoot tomorrow. We cataloged the nickels by date so we would know what we had when we got on the internet that night with Mr. Johnson. That evening we tried again with the phone calls. We reached 2 more of the Maryland Henrys, but still no Henry Simmonses with an Arkansas connection. Later that evening, Mr. Johnson helped us search for coin collector sites, which there were many of. According to one website, the value of our nickels was somewhere between $1,400 and $5,700. We couldn't believe our ears. And that's the end of chapter 30. You think they're going to find out who the real Henry Simmons is? I don't know. Come back tomorrow to find out.